Well, good evening. Man, I'm glad to see you, and I'm looking forward to this conversation. I just like to talk to people on my Pastor Well podcast to do that. We thought it would be a good thing for me to do that with some of our folks here, and nobody better to start with than Chris Parrish. So, Chris, come on and join me. Uh, Chris is we call him our senior associate pastor. It's hard to believe anybody with a baby face like that is senior anything, but he is.
44.
So, welcome.
Thank you. This is fun.
Man, I'm glad you're here. So, you've been at Buck Run how long now?
Just a few weeks shy of 5 years. I came April 2015. Yeah.
I want to tell the story first of how you came here,
Yeah.
and then we'll take the time to sort of tell your backstory.
Yeah.
But so I had you in preaching class at Southern Seminary, right?
Yeah. And I had you for pastoral ministry.
Pastoral
too, as
ministry.
well. Yeah.
In pastoral ministry, I do all the talking, though. So I never get to know guys in there. But
Yeah.
when I have you, especially for the practicum, where guys preach several times and I get to hear them preach, that's when I really get to know guys. And frankly, first time I heard you preach, I went, wow, this guy is good. And you really are a fantastic preacher. So much so that I thought to myself then, man, I'd love to have him at Buck Run. When I came to Buck Run, I told the church then, I said, there are hospitals and then there are teaching hospitals. Buck Run's going to be a teaching church. There are churches. We're going to be a teaching church, and we're going to get young guys, and we're going to pour into them and send them out, and some of them we're going to keep, and that's just who we are.
Yeah.
So when I heard you, I thought, wow, I'd love to have him at Buck Run, and I really wanted to invest in you. Um, and then one day, I just needed help. I needed help personally, and I saw you in the cafeteria one day. You were walking across me, and I just thought, I'm gonna hit him up with the idea. Now you were pastoring at the time,
Yeah,
right,
I
in
was.
Anderson
Yeah.
County,
Yeah.
and I thought, it's really something for a guy to give up preaching every week. I mean, preachers preach. That's what they love doing. So I didn't know if you'd be interested or not. So I just stopped you in the cafeteria and said, hey, this isn't a commitment on my part, and I'm not asking for one on yours. I just want to know if it's something you'd like even to talk about and explore. Would you be interested in maybe coming to work with me at Buck Run? And you were fairly coy. You went, yeah, I mean, yeah, I think that'd be something that we're talking about. I'd like to talk to you about it. Now you tell the rest of the story. You tell what was going on behind the scenes.
Yeah. So I had been pastoring, I guess, since November of 2012, I think. And that would have been, I think that was January, February of 2015. It was a church. They were very kind to me, very gracious to me. They loved to hear the word preached. I'm very thankful for them. It was a situation that probably was not going to be super long term. We had a couple theological differences that I think would have made that hard. And we'd really been praying about what the next thing the Lord would have for us. And the night before that was Hannah's first day back at work at Southern after maternity leave.
She worked in Dr. Muller's office.
I was there. I'd gone up with her and had class and was having lunch with her. And we had just talked about the night before about what if the Lord was going to call us away, what that might look like. And she asked me, would you ever consider going somewhere where you weren't the every week preacher? And I said, yes, but it would have to be Buck Run, Dr. York sort of situation. Me thinking that's a thing that...
You called me by name.
Yeah, I said there would have to be a Buck Run, Dr. York sort of situation for me to step out of the pulpit. It'd have to be a guy I'd want to go learn under. And that's not out there. So I just sort of shut that down, like that's not going to happen. So then I had that conversation with you.
So we meet the next day.
The next day.
In the cafeteria. And you're having lunch with Hannah. So yeah, I didn't see her, though. I said this to you, and then you go back over to the table.
I go back to the seat, and she saw me talk to you. She said, well, what did Dr. York want? And I said, well, he wants to maybe have me come work for him at Buck Run. And she said, no, seriously, what what did Dr. York want? And I said, no, really, he wants maybe to have me come to Buck Run. She said, no, quit joking with me. Like, she was not in the mood. She's like, I want to know, what did he want? I don't know what to tell you. That's really what he wanted. And it was a sweet thing of the Lord to sort of work it out the way that he did.
Yeah.
We weren't looking for it. It was just the Lord sort of did it.
And in a sense, I wasn't either. It really was one of those times where God impresses something on your heart, and the rest is history. So you came in what month? April?
Yeah, I did Easter, and I think a week or two after Easter, and then.
So we're coming up on your 5th anniversary here. You came on just as my personal assistant, right? And just taking care of me, making me my calendar, filing. You did some trips with me.
Yeah.
All right, so we stayed in a hotel room together one time, didn't we?
Yeah.
And I have a bad habit of falling asleep with the TV on.
Yeah.
And I'm gripping that remote like Charlton Heston grips his rifle.
Tanya
right?
had warned me. She had like prepared me that might happen. Yeah.
So, I don't know why we were like unable to get 2 rooms.
Yeah.
So we're having to share a room, not the same bed, but you were like 2 queen beds, and so you had to pry that out of my.
We were. I don't remember.
So this had to be a really terrifying moment for you.
I don't remember. We were watching some documentary or something, and you had fallen asleep, and I thought, well, the TV's on. I'll just go into bed. He's got the remote. And it was loud, and I just couldn't. After a while, I couldn't go to sleep.
I'm completely deaf in my right ear, so
I tried to sneak up to the TV and
loud.
turn it off, like at the TV, but hotel TVs, I couldn't do
They
it.
don't have buttons anymore.
Finally, at 3 a.m., I sort of snuck over and took it from your hands, like just really hoping that you didn't wake up. I think I'd only been a Buck Run not too long at that point, and thinking this is gonna go weird real fast if he wakes up right now.
Well, I'm glad I didn't wake up, and I'm sorry I fell asleep with the TV on loud. But anyway. The thing is, at Buck Run, we've got a real habit of guys coming here, working their way up. We find their giftedness and try and find places they serve. And I've been blessed. Guys have been with me long term. Daniel Broyles, Zach, now Scott, you. And you didn't stay my personal assistant very long. As openings came, man, we put you in a much broader context, and you preach for me a lot in my absence, and man, just do a fantastic job. Tell me about your growing up, how you came to know Christ and felt the call to preach.
So I was living in Marion County. My parents were at the time.
Native Kentuckian.
Yep. So I've lived all over Kentucky, but lived in Kentucky my entire life. My mother was a believer, and so I was growing up at least in a Christian home. I was at a little church in Marion County, Central Baptist Church. Doug was my pastor. He's a faithful guy, preached the word. I think he's an Indiana Baptist pastor now. I've not seen Doug for years and years, but he was faithful, preached the gospel. So by the time I was 5 or 6, I had heard the gospel 100 times, and I knew it. I was 7 when I really began to think about my own sin, and I knew the basics of the gospel. I talked to my mom. My parents took me to talk to Doug, who was faithful to walk me through what that looked like, and to talk to me about what following Jesus would look like. And I trusted Christ at 7. That's young, but even I've looked back on that a lot since then and thought, just to say, was that really the time I trusted Christ? And I'm convinced it was. I don't think I knew much, but I think I knew enough. And so I was baptized there at Central Baptist Church when I was 7 years old, and really didn't really know what the Lord had for me. At 7, you don't really have plans for your life. I was 11 or 12, living in Nicholasville, going to church in actually might have been living in Anderson County at that time, going to church in Lexington. And we were without a youth pastor, and our older junior, senior guys had been just doing the sermon for the youth worship. And what made me want to volunteer for that as a 11, 12-year-old? I was 7th grade. I don't know. It's got to be the Lord. I was on to social distancing really early. And in 7th grade, I was very shy, big Coke bottle glasses. It was I did not talk much around people. And something made me say, I would like to do one of those. Now I can say it had to only be the Holy Spirit. So I preached once when I was in 7th grade. I think I preached Matthew 6:25 to 34, not being anxious. I'm sure it was terrible. But I remember from that moment thinking, I think this might be what I want to give my life to.
Really?
And so I didn't really give up anything to go into the ministry. I'm 11 and 12 years old. At that point, you don't really have a career path set in your mind. So I've never wanted to do realistically anything but this, but to be a pastor. So from that time, my church affirmed me. They were gracious to me. And
Did your parents encourage that, or what was it like there at home?
I immediately sort of felt that the first time I preached, I might want to do this. I kept that to myself. I didn't say anything to anybody. And then over the next year and a half to 2 years, we would have youth Sundays and other stuff that they gave me an opportunity to preach before the church. And it was then that people began to come to me and to my parents and say, hey, do you think the Lord might be calling him? Do you think I think the Lord's doing something here. Have you considered that? Which I had, but I didn't know what that meant. I didn't know who to talk to. I didn't know how to talk about that. And so it actually was people from my church who were the first ones who helped to put words to what I was feeling and said, we think the Lord might be calling you to be a pastor.
Yeah, well, that's one of the key ways I think you discern the will of God.
Yeah.
I say there are 5 elements to it. So there's the Word of God. God always acts consistently with His Word. You're never going to do something that is contrary to His Word. Then your desire, your gifting, opportunities, and then the testimony of other believers. Yeah. And those things lined up for you.
Yeah.
So at what point did you then make it public, this is what I feel called to do?
I think it was my freshman year of high school. I said I want to go into vocational ministry. I want to give my life to this. My home church was very kind to me, gave me opportunities. My pastor there let me shadow him. We co-taught a class together on my sophomore or junior year for adults. He walked me through. They let me preach. So by the time I graduated high school, I had preached a decent number of times for our whole church, which is invaluable just for the experience of being in front of people and going through the process. And so they affirmed that in me and did everything to help me that they could, which I'm still very thankful. There are a lot of places that might even say to somebody, we feel you're called to ministry, but we don't really know what to do with you. And they did everything they knew how to, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah. And you went to Cumberland?
Yeah.
Which is a Baptist school?
Yeah. It was a last-minute change for me. I had planned on going somewhere else, had sent all my test scores to somewhere else, and sort of at the last minute changed my mind, and it changed the course of my life. It's where I met Hannah, and ended up at Cumberland the last minute.
Okay, now I'm a tremendous fan of your wife.
Yeah.
Hannah is. I first knew her. She was working in Dr. Muller's office at Southern, and she's just really just incredibly gifted, very bright. Now I know her differently now, but at the time, she struck me as really, really businesslike, which is appropriate for working in Dr. Muller's office. But she's not that all the time.
No.
So tell me about meeting Hannah, how that happened.
So I met her. We actually argue about which event on the first week of classes that we've met each other.
Well, I don't want to start an argument.
But she's a sophomore. She was a sophomore. I was coming in as a freshman, and we met. We think we've agreed now on like a Thursday night. It was like a small group sort of gathering where you could get lined up with BCM type community groups. And so she had come to talk to me and invite me to her community group. And I was with my cousin, who ended up being the best man at our wedding. I was rooming with him, and she came up and talked to me for a while and invited me to her family group. And when she walked away, I turned to my cousin and said, she loves me. It's the only time I've been right.
The question is, tell me about the 25 other times you said that about some girl, right?
Yeah, so we started dating. We didn't start officially dating probably until later in that semester, but we were pretty much inseparable. We were in Williamsburg, so there's nothing to do in Williamsburg. She would call me and say, hey, I'm going to Walmart. Do you need to go? And so I would just have stacks of stuff in my room because I would make up an excuse like, oh, yeah, I need something. We'd go. I'd go pick her up and we'd go. And I would just buy whatever I needed to. Even if I didn't need it. So I just had all these groceries in my dorm room because I just kept making these trips with her. And that happened pretty much immediately, and that was fall of 2006. We've been together since then.
How long did the courtship last?
So we started dating in fall of 2006 and got married July of 2009. So we were engaged for a year and a half. It was about a 16 months too long.
Yeah. And now you have 2 children.
2 children. Henry, who's 2.5, and Elizabeth, who's 5.
Well, and they're delightful.
Yeah.
They are absolutely delightful. So talk to me about like I've already said, you really are just a tremendous preacher. Our people know you, and I know all of them are nodding in agreement. Uh, People are always sweet. They think they're hurting my feelings or something like, but they say to me, "Oh man, Chris was so." Now we miss you when you're gone. And I'm like, I get it. You don't have to mitigate that one bit. I'm delighted that when I'm gone, people don't feel like uh, things drop at all. In fact, I got to tell you, uh, a story is that somebody recently was here. Their first time at church was a Sunday that I was gone and you were preaching, and they came to me. They said, we left and we went, if that guy's the B team, we really want to hear the head guy. So man, you put pressure on me. I've got to really got to deliver the goods. But you think a lot about preaching, don't you? I mean, you study the craft of it, the art of it.
Yeah.
Uh, Tell me, who do you listen to? Who do you like to listen to? Who has shaped your preaching?
I think part of the reason I think about a lot about it now is that for a long time I preached without thinking about it. I mean, I was preaching sermons beginning when I was 11, 12 years old, and just preached as often as I could from there on. It wasn't really until seminary that I began to think much about the act of preaching and what it was. I was sort of going with feel and what I'd thought and heard and piecing stuff together. So in many ways, I felt like I need to catch up. It was my understanding of how to interpret Scripture that was way ahead of my understanding of homiletics, and that's what drove me. I had just started pastoring when I took your preaching course, and that was in many ways really helpful for me to put words and shapes to what I had sort of formed in my mind. And when I heard what you said, like, yeah, that makes sense. That's what I want to do. That's what I've been trying to do, but haven't quite really outlined. I listened to you. Being under you has been helpful for me. I still, if you look at my outlines, most of my stuff, I default to the way you teach preaching, the way you outline. That's where I begin. I don't always end there, but most of the time that's where I begin, and I still do that a lot.
Yeah, I would love to take credit for you, but you know the movie A River Runs Through It. Do you know that movie?
Sure.
You're gonna say no. I can tell no. All right, you got to watch it.
I mean,
You
I've
got to
heard
watch
the title.
A River Runs Through It. It's a tremendous movie, and it's directed by Robert Redford.
Okay.
And it's about a Methodist, a Presbyterian preacher and his two sons, sort of a Cain and Abel kind of a thing. But Tom Skerritt plays the dad, the Presbyterian pastor, and his two sons grew up. They couldn't be more different. One of them sort of academic. He's going to be a journalist, and the other one, played by Brad Pitt, is sort of a wild buck and gets into trouble and all kinds of things. The thing that weaves throughout the whole movie is that they go trout fishing and they fly fish. And Tom Skerritt teaches them exactly how to do it, 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, in this motion. There's a scene in the movie where the older brother is watching the Brad Pitt character, and he describes the day that he and his dad noticed that Brad Pitt's doing his own thing. That the dad taught him his very methodical thing, but now he's gone to another level. He's got his own rhythm. He's doing his own art form.
Yeah.
If I'm the guy that taught you 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 2 o'clock, I'm really happy about that.
Yeah. No,
But when you preach, you've got your own rhythm. You're doing your own thing. One of the things you do, where you you also don't know kung fu. The boomers, we all remember David Carradine in Kung Fu, and he would go the student has become greater than the teacher, and one of the things you do that I don't do is you preach without notes. Mm-hmm. Now tell me how you do that. How do you commit everything to memory as much as you do and preach without notes?
Yeah. I've always preached without notes. Part of it, I didn't know any better. I thought that's what people did. So when I started preaching, I preached without notes because I don't know what made me do that, but I was under the impression that's what everybody did. I have a decent memory. I can memorize a sermon without a ton of effort. If Hannah sends me to the store for 5 things, I'll forget 4 of them. I can't. It's that sort of stuff doesn't stick.
Uh-huh.
I put a lot of time into working through even verbally out loud sermons, mentally, and sort of thinking if I've written it well, it shouldn't be that hard for me to memorize. If I struggle to really memorize it, it tells me something about my outline, that I've not done enough work, that it's too clunky or it doesn't flow the way it should, that it should fit together, and normally it fits together in my mind. And so by the time I preach it on a Sunday morning, it's verbally or mentally gone through my mind 7, 8, 9, 10 times. So I'm trying to create ruts and then just trying to stand up and let it fly.
Man, that's fantastic. I encourage you to keep it up if you can.
Yeah.
The day might come where you got such a pace, you
Yeah.
may not be able to do it every time, but you do it so very very well. It's one reason why you're such a great communicator is that your audience is sitting there feeling the connection. There's no downward look at your notes or whatever that ever gets in the way between you and them, and it just comes from your heart so well. You just do it extremely well.
Yeah.
Uh,
I appreciate that.
I love to hear you preach.
I appreciate that. I do.
My wife loves to hear you preach. I'm telling you, to anybody watching this, if you've not heard his sermon on 1 Corinthians 13, it's just one of the best I've ever heard. In fact, I think it is the best sermon on 1 Corinthians 13 I've ever heard. So if you've not seen it, go to buckrun.org and look at our media and find it and listen to it. But just about everything you do extremely well.
I appreciate that.
So you're coming up on your 5th anniversary at Buck Run. Nobody knew it was going to look like this.
Yeah.
You know. What do you reflect on in the last 5 years? How has God worked in your life through this church?
Yeah. I think when I came to Buck Run, I came knowing that there was a lot I didn't know, but I wasn't even sure what I didn't know yet. I wasn't sure what I still needed. I knew I needed a lot, but I wasn't sure what that looked like. I was serving a place where I was by myself. I had no other staff, and I knew there's only so much I can learn by myself. And I felt as a pastor the weight of that, and I felt the burden of leading a church and feeling like I don't know that I'm doing this well, and I feel like I'm sort of the people were kind. They followed me. They let me lead them. And when I did the right thing and when I made mistakes, they let me do that. But I felt that inadequacy in myself. And I think what I've learned in the last 5 years is not that I have everything I need, but that now I feel like I've got a better pulse on, oh, okay, that's what I was missing. I didn't even know what it was. Buck Run has helped me to know what I didn't know. And I think that's helped. It has modeled for me in many ways what a healthy church looks like. Often when I'm with guys, whether it's in classes, we just had a doctoral seminar not long ago in January. Often when I talk to guys my age that are serving in churches, they're just in really hard places.
Yeah.
It's hard for their family. It's hard on them. That they are trudging along and seeing very little fruit, and it seems that sometimes the people are working against them. And when I have those conversations, I'm reminded, like, that's not my experience at Buck Run at all.
No.
Even in the slightest, and Buck Run has constantly been to me evidence of God's grace to me, that it is what it is.
You used the word that I most frequently use. If people ask me to describe Buck Run in one word, my word is healthy.
Yeah.
It's just healthy. There's the balance of word and spirit, of truth and passion, of evangelism and discipleship. Like we're in such a weird time right now. I mean, I'm getting pastors calling me and texting me every day right now. What do we do? How do I do this? They're feeling pressure from their churches, even in this, and which is just unbelievable to me. The constant in my life here is Buck Run people are with us. They get it. Yeah. They're in it. I can't tell you how many texts, emails I've gotten this week saying, "Oh, thank you. We love you. Thank you for your leadership. You guys, our staff is so fantastic. We love our pastors." Yeah. It is a healthy place to be, and it's a safe place to grow. And how I thank God for this church. A lot of churches are not very easy. I mean, we've seen it. Buck Run has a way of taking guys in when they've been chewed up and spit out by other places, and this is a very healing place. So every day I thank God that we're here.
Yeah. It's good for me to know, even on Sundays that I preach, to know there's pressure in that. I always take preaching seriously, handling the Word of God whether it's to 1,000 people or to 10 people. It matters.
Yeah.
Following you and wanting to make sure that I honor you well, and that matters to me. But also knowing that these people will take nothing less than the Word. That in the prep, that's what I've prepped. That's what I'm shooting for, is the Word, because they know it. That they won't be fooled by a substitute. And it's been really, really good for me as a preacher to know, man, they're expecting that. I've got to be ready to give them the Word, because they get it every other week, and they'll know when they don't. I hear them sometimes when they've heard other stuff or been to a conference and say things like, well, he said good things, but he didn't preach the point of the text. And they just know how to recognize healthy, good biblical exposition, like a lot of churches don't. And I think that's a really good thing. That's a good pressure to have.
They know context.
They have the right hungers, right? So it's it's really good.
That's right. Well, I always like to conclude my conversations with what I call the twinkling of an eye round. I just ask some random questions, and you give me your answer. So do you have a dream car? Like if money were no object, you'd drive any car? Is there a car
I kind of don't want to admit. It's, Scott, what's it called? Mini Cooper. I kind of want a Mini Cooper.
Well, there's a reason you shouldn't admit that. I'm
No.
just saying. That's a Mini Cooper.
I look at them online more than I would like to admit. I don't know why. I was just always kind of wanted a Mini Cooper.
Did you have Matchbox cars when you were a kid?
I think when I was a kid, I really wanted to drive a go-kart for a long time, and it's the closest thing you can get now. And
okay.
So
All
sadly,
right.
Mini Cooper.
When all this stuff is over and people can travel again, if you could go take Hannah and go anywhere in the world, where would you go?
I think London.
London.
Yeah.
Great place.
So there last year when we visited some church partners in Birmingham. We went down to see London. Hannah's not been. I think she would love it. She's an Anglophile. So I really enjoyed it, but it would be fun to go with her because I think she would really love it.
If somebody gave you free tickets, best seats in the house, to the Metropolitan Opera, would you go?
Yeah, I'd go.
Would you be excited about it?
Probably not.
All right. Your favorite Kentucky Wildcat of all time?
Tayshaun Prince.
Why?
I think I was in high school when he was playing. I remember like the 7 threes against North Carolina. He was so smooth. That was in the Tubby era where we were having guys that were good but not great, and Tayshaun seemed to sort of elevate.
He did.
He won a title with the Pistons right away. It was my first time that I could really remember being able to cheer for a UK guy in the NBA. And so Tayshaun has always sort of stuck with me.
Okay.
Always looked like he wasn't trying.
All right. How often do you shave?
Oh, gosh. 2 times a week. I mean, I'm letting it go right now because
That's your growth.
Because of the quarantine, yeah.
All right. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, let me just say, I actually brought some gifts for you.
Okay.
All right. I don't normally do this, but I brought some gifts for you, things that I think would be appropriate for you. All right. So this is a shaving mug. All right. I've got a friend in Oklahoma who sends me, this is handmade shave soap. And so this morning I melted down some in there, and you put it in the microwave, melt it down, and put it in there. And I can't afford to give you a nice badger hair brush, but you need a badger hair brush with this really nice shave soap. And at the rate you shave,
I'll let you know
that should last you 100 years.
I'll let you know in a few weeks how it goes.
All right. So the best, in my humble opinion, best luggage in the world is Toomey.
Okay.
Toomey is the best. So I want you to know, I got you a Toomey luggage tag. So there's your Toomey luggage tag.
Thank you.
It's a plastic one. It's not even one of their patent one, black ones. Now, people think that you have a baby face. You don't look like a tough guy. So we want to toughen you up. So these are tattoo sleeves that you could
Oh,
put them on,
I'm gonna wear these.
wear a tank top or something, and shirt sleeve shirts. I want a picture.
Okay.
We got to post a picture. Uh, while we're all home with nothing to do, seeing you wearing tattoo sleeves in a short
Yeah, we
sleeve
can
T-shirt would
we can
be
make that. Are you
great.
sure I don't have real sleeves?
Yeah. All right. I've lost one. Oh, here. So I can see, man. You've upped your game with the shoes.
Yep.
These aren't authentic Cole
No,
Haas,
these are not.
but it's okay. You've even got the colored shoestrings.
You've influenced me in a lot of ways.
See, I didn't even know that. And I come in here tonight. I brought you 3 different colors of shoestrings, and then I see you. I'm glad I
Yeah.
didn't bring blue. You've already got the blue, so man, you're rocking it. Here's 3
Sweet.
more colors to add to your collection
Thank you.
to match whatever you're wearing, and
These are great.
just know, man, that first of all, I am delighted that you're here. Our staff is phenomenal.
Yeah.
We are
Yeah.
blessed that all the pastors here are so encouraging. We're a team. We're for each other. We're all seeking the will of God, seeking to honor each other. Your spirit, Chris, is just a joy to work with, man. Our whole church loves you. Your fellow pastors love you. I certainly love you. And thank God that our paths crossed at Southern
Yeah.
Seminary, and particularly that day in the cafeteria.
Yeah.
And I'm grateful that you're here at Buck Run. Hope you're here
Thank you.
a long time, because
Me too.
I like doing this with you.
Me too.
So let me remind you that this Sunday we are going to be having services online again. We will start at 9:45. I think we got Sunday school classes starting
Yep,
this week.
we'll have some Sunday school classes up this week.
Sunday school classes be posted this week. So the classes that we were already offering, we're going to finish those out. The same teachers that were teaching, doing that. Our goal during this time, we just really want to stay in contact and communication. We want to be available to you as always. Pray for us. We're praying for you. We want to stay in contact with especially our older members, our vulnerable members, but that often means not our physical presence. Yeah. We just don't need to be together right now until we get a handle on this thing. But we can drop things off if you need groceries picked up, food. If you got some problems that maybe we can help solve, let us know. We're in this together. I just thank God for you, Buck Run, for my fellow pastors and all of our staff, our deacons. They're doing a tremendous job. So may the Lord use us and bless us as we honor him. And I'll see you on Sunday. God bless.